Hello, I am Jennifer Lynn Purcell, aka Ever-Tuning Butterfly, bringing to you Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD. I don't know if you're a new listener or not, but I would like to share with you where I get most of my articles for this podcast. I've recently learned about a nonprofit that I would really like to help. It's the NVLD Project. In addition to doing research on NVLD and working to get it back on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that is the DSM, they provide support groups for those with NVLD. You can find the NVLD Project at www.nvld.org. All proceeds from this podcast and the ads will go towards the NVLD Project. I will include the link for this in the description of the podcast. Please go to livingwithnld.com to learn more about my podcast. Also, I would like to announce that I now have created a YouTube channel for this podcast. I will post the link for this in the description for you. Hi, so today we are going to talk about estimating distances with NLD. And the article we are going to use is NLD, What Is It Really? By Patricia S. Lemmer. And she describes what NLD is by giving us a look at what it would be like to be a child with it. So, quote, children diagnosed with NLD probably had motor and sensory deficiencies in the first year of life. Any skipped step in motor development is a red flag to me. Those with NLD may have never crawled, walked early or late, or adopted idiosyncratic movement patterns. They could also overly favor one hand or lack a dominant side. Individualized sensory motor activities can bring their motor symptoms up to age level, end quote. So for as long as I can remember, I've had challenges with estimating different distances. Maybe the fact that I am nearsighted has something to do with it, but I'm not sure. I remember when I was learning how to drive, I wasn't able to picture a football field in my head for when I needed to turn my signal before turning. Since I couldn't do this, I would remember to use that white dashed line that is in the turning lane as my guide when to turn my signal on. I remember the day when I found out that I needed glasses. My family and I were having dinner, and I was trying to read the time on the oven clock, which wasn't that far away from where I was sitting. My dad says it was about 10 feet away. I couldn't read the clock. I asked my mom what time it was. She said to me, "Can't you read the clock, sweetie?" I said, "I can't read it, Mommy." She said, "Are you sure you can't see it?" I said, "Yes." I was proven right when I took my eye exam a couple of days later and was told I needed glasses. I said to Mommy, "Told you so." I also tried to ask my dad what is a good way to estimate distances because he used to be a carpenter, so he frequently did that. He has been able to give me many tips, like remembering to measure twice when you're cutting a piece of wood because you may make a mistake if you don't. I also have had an experience today when I was trying to vacuum a part of my garage. I wasn't sure if the cord I was using was going to reach until I unraveled it. But I was correct in estimating the length of what I needed. This made me feel good because I know there are plenty of times when I have not done this correctly. It is a good thing to ask for help in times of doubt because it shows the strength that you recognize that you need and are willing to ask for it. In this interview, Nonverbal Learning Disorder answers to common questions with Michelle Berg and Churchill Center and School. I want to use the quote from that interview. And the quote is, typically, students with nonverbal learning disorder have lots of difficulties with spatial concepts or perceptual concepts. They can be in a class like geography and have no idea how to visualize distance or how to visualize what's a city, what's a state, and what's a continent. They struggle to visualize what's a foot, what's a yard, and what's half a mile, end quote. So in that interview, I really like how they were saying that they can't even imagine what something a neurotypical probably could try to imagine, how big a city is, how big a state is, how big a foot is, how big a yard is, etc. And I remember that before I started running, it was hard for me to even imagine what a mile was, or how long it was, I should say. And I remember that after I started to learn how to run and got used to how long those miles were and how long they felt, then it was easier for me to know how long a distance was or how it felt to my body, because I was getting used to those distances. And I was also getting used to, like I said, how my body felt after I would run them. And also how my mind felt, because I had to keep telling my mind, okay, I haven't run this many miles, but I have this many miles left to go until I'm done. Different play tricks on your mind. Another thing that helped me grasp distances is knitting, because I have to knit many different things that require you to do the same thing until you get to a certain length. Then you change what you're doing in the pattern. This has helped me memorize numbers for those specific patterns and learn what those measurements look like. So an example would be, I'm working on a hat now, and I have to do a certain number of repetitions on the knitting loom until I get to a certain length, which I think is 9 inches, or maybe it's 9.5 actually. And then I do something different. And because I know I have to get to that distance or amount, I remember that in my brain. I usually memorize it. Then I go, okay, measure it with a measuring tape. No, it's not there quite yet. Oh, yes, now it is there now. Then I know what that looks like. It helps my mind be able to visualize it. Also, when I was helping a congregant at my mom's church recently by answering their question about a bookmark we had that they wanted to buy, I offered to measure it for them because I knew my approximation of the width was off. When I got a tape measure, I found out that I was right, because it was only a couple inches wide instead of a few inches is what I had estimated. So that kind of helped me there too, because I had said that the bookmark was a few inches wide when it was really only 2 inches wide. And then I realized, oh, my thumb is basically 2 inches wide. So that kind of helped me think of a reference for the next time. And I also know that if I don't have my glasses on, it's hard for me to see, which can make it hard for me to estimate distances. this definitely relates to driving. I realized that I have to have my mirrors positioned just right. Otherwise, I won't see things very well or easily when I'm driving. It also helps if I have my hair in a lower ponytail because it's easier for me to turn my head to scan my mirrors because unfortunately I can't see everything with just moving my eyes because I wear my glasses. If my eyes were moist enough to wear contacts, then that would be easier to do, but they're too dry and itchy. Maybe someday that will change. Also, I know that when I started cooking, which was when I was probably 8 years old, I got more practice with measuring various ingredients in the kitchen. This relates to approximating distances because if you can imagine 4 cups of milk easily, then it might be easier for you to imagine 4 feet than if you never cooked or measured anything before trying to do that. And there's another way you can look at this, and it might be hard for NTs to do, neurotypicals and learning and people with learning challenges or physical challenges. So there are 4.5 trillion cigarette butts and 50 billion plastic water bottles that are littered each year. Quote, while we continue the battle on plastics, reports indicate that cigarette butts are the single most littered item in the world, surpassing plastics with 2 billion pounds of butts tossed aside annually, end quote. If you go to this link, the omniocalculator.com, I'll provide that in the description because it might be hard for you to make out what I just said. You'll see a calculator that will show you how many cigarette butts can fill a plastic water bottle, also based on how many you pick up in a certain amount of time. It takes about, not sure if I'm going to say this correctly, but it's 37 trillion, or sorry, I think it's 37 million because there's sorry, I'm not very good at reading numbers out loud because I forget how many zeros you need for it to be trillion or billion or million. But it's 37,766,072,240 water bottles to go around the earth 190 times. The US consumes 37,766,072,240 water bottles each. Sorry, I know that's weird. So you'll need about 26,856,6176,647.1 plastic water bottles to fill with to get to 4 trillion cigarettes to circle the world. Wow, that's a lot. I know that probably didn't make sense to you the way I read it off, but I will put a screenshot of that into the description so it makes more sense to you. Sorry about that. I just have a problem with reading big numbers like that off. Maybe that's because of NLD. But whether it's trying to estimate distances or improve your bad depth perception or realizing that our vision may contribute to our visual spatial issues, I and others who have NLD experience these challenges today. So as I wrap up, I would like to share a few things with you. I have recently created a website and Facebook and Instagram account for the podcast. And I would like you to go to them. They're called Living with NLD. And also, I would like to hear from you. What are your challenges that you run into when you're trying to estimate distances, or trying to work with depth perception? And if you listen on Spotify, you can email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. If you listen on livingwithnld.com, please leave a comment below the episode. And here's an app that you may find helpful for you. The Khan Academy can help you get better at different kinds of math, including statistics, algebra, calculus, and geometry. It can also help you study for the SATs and ACTs. And that relates to distances because if you get better at math, that might help you with calculate distances better, because sometimes math and distances cross paths. So I hope you were able to learn something new today and enjoyed this episode. Bye. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also, see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than originally it was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.